The numbers are in on the worst drought that hit the United States in decades. The U.S. Department of Agriculture slashed its expectations for corn production, 17% lower than last month's forecast, and also cut the annual forecast by 13% from last year. But there's a lot more at stake than just the price of corn. Craig Mauro is live for us in Chicago with the details. Craig, what's happening here?
That's right, Phil. Although this drought and this report today are certainly affecting the price of corn. Now, those prices are determined actually right here in Chicago, just a few blocks away from where I am right now, and that is on the floors of the Chicago Board of Trade. Now, corn hit yet another record high earlier today on Friday before prices retreated a little bit and closed slightly down at the end of the session. However, overall, corn prices are up 60% since only mid-June. Now, that, of course, is going to have repercussions much further afield than Chicago and even than the United States. The government report confirmed what farmers across the U.S. have been saying all summer. A historic drought ravaging several agricultural states is taking a heavy toll on production.
The weather data, for June and July across the Corn Belt, biblical numbers here. I mean, you have to go back to the Dust Bowl years in the 1930s to find, weather this extreme, both temperatures and precipitation.
Most corn grown in the U.S. does not end up on our dinner plates, but in feed troughs for livestock here and around the world. The effects of low yields and record prices will ripple throughout the global economy.
You start looking at the aggregate U.S. numbers. We're in a situation where it looks like to me purchased feed expenses in this country are going to triple relative to where we were just a decade ago.
Good harvests in other producing countries will offset some of the losses here, but the United States is by far the world's largest corn supplier.
When the rest of the world is looking for corn, they look towards the U.S. because we are the major producer, we are the major exporter of corn.
In most places in the U.S., the damage done to corn crops is irreversible at this point in the season. Soybeans, the other major feed staple grown here, are now in a critical stage.
There's probably about 2 weeks left where rains could still significantly add to soybean yield potential.
If soybean production is hit as badly as corn, markets can expect higher soybean prices, which have already set record highs this summer. Now, the United Nations maintains an index of global food prices, and it said this week that those averages increased sharply in the month of July, up by 6%. That is still not, however, at the previous peak, which was set in February 2011. Phil?
Craig, for our viewers around the world, they may not know this, but a very large portion of corn grown here in the United States is used for ethanol, essentially. Is that why the UN is asking those rules to be changed in terms of ethanol investment and usage?
That's right. That ethanol production was set by a government mandate. It is legally, corn producers are legally obliged to produce a certain amount of ethanol that goes into gasoline here in the United States. Now, that last year was at about 40% of the U.S.'s corn production. Now, the USDA said today it expects 10.8 billion bushels of production this year. That could still go down. Last year, about 5 billion bushels were used to make ethanol. So, of course, the share is going to go up to greater than 40%, possibly close to 50%. Now, that, of course, means that there's less corn to use for fuel or, for food or for feeding animals that eventually end up as food. And that's why the United Nations and several others are urging the U.S. to adjust the mandate this year because of this drought. Now, there is an administrative process that goes on in Washington that can allow for that, and there are several agencies looking at the matter now, and I understand that they are expected to make a decision on whether to ease or suspend or adjust that mandate within the next few months.
Craig, thank you very much. A very serious situation indeed.